Now, just keep in mind that if you are unsure about a food or a name on the label, it's better to stick with the motto of, when in doubt, leave it out. It seems easy enough. However, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, or FDA, proposed a change to the label. And that new label was proposed in order to identify a few specific things. The serving sizes are now going to be listed as bigger and bolder. They are also updated to reflect more realistic serving sizes. For example, right now ice cream has a serving size of just a half cup. The changes would increase the serving size to a more realistic size of 1 cup. Likewise, for soda, instead of an 8-ounce serving, it will be 12 or 20 ounces, the amount people typically eat or drink. And the calories will be listed in a larger font. And added sugars must also be listed on the label. And there will be other small changes to reflect current nutrition and food science. Now, it should be an improvement to help you quickly read and understand more about exactly what you're eating. So there you have it, the very complex nature of the food label simplified for your use. And your ability to translate the food label will aid tremendously in your quest to know more about what you're eating and help with any body composition changes that you may want to make in the future. Now, you know the food label language. How does this help to make more consistent, good decisions for the food that you buy and eat? Well, it will only help if you take just a little bit of time to actually look at the label and interpret it if the food has a nutritional makeup and a quality to meet your goals. For example, take into account the fact that carbohydrates and proteins each provide about 4 calories per gram, but fats provide more at 9 calories per gram. And you should have an idea of what the recommended ranges are for you to try and eat of each nutrient based on the things like your age, your weight, and your sex. But keep in mind that current science continues to update the recommendations that you should follow. And it may take some getting used to. Reading nutrition labels takes time and makes grocery shopping take a lot longer when you first do this. So let's go through a food label and consider some very general rules of thumb. Well, the first thing I would do is make sure that you get the right amount of protein in your diet. It's clear that protein is vital to normal body function and improved body composition. It keeps you full and less likely to gorge at other meals. But how do you know the correct amount to consume? Well, I'm a fan of using hand sizes to estimate your needs, but it can be good to count calories for a short period of time until you get into a good routine. So simply determine your protein needs based on the numerous factors that we discussed, like age, sex, and your goals. Most people will fall somewhere between 1 and 1.5 grams of protein per kilogram of body mass for your protein needs. Again, for a 150-pound or 68-kilogram person, this would be between 70 and 100 grams of protein per day. Then read the label to see how much protein you are eating with each meal. And then just add up the grams of protein and multiply by 4, the conversion factor for protein grams to protein calories. And now you have your calorie intake from protein. In my research showing improvements in body composition with higher protein, I asked participants to include a good protein source at each meal. It could be eggs in the morning, a protein shake, lean meats, or combinations of vegetables, seeds, beans, and nuts. And once your protein is dialed in, use the nutrition facts label to look at your carbohydrate intake. Now, you may be surprised at just how many carbohydrates and sugars are in common foods that you eat. They may be simple sugars like fruits and juices, or complex starches like whole grains and vegetables. Also, many empty calories are typically high in carbohydrates, things like candies, sodas, and many juices and white bread. And one good approach is to try and limit the amount of simple sugars you eat or drink and choose more complex starches instead. These foods, like vegetables and whole grains, usually have more fiber too. So on the food label, compare the total carbohydrate value to the amount of sugar and fiber in the product. Now, is there a high amount of sugar compared to the total carbohydrate value? If so, this is probably a simple carbohydrate that should be limited. The only exceptions being certain disease conditions and maybe for some very active people during exercise. But is there a high amount of fiber and a low amount of sugar compared to the total carbohydrate in the product? Well, this is probably the better day-to-day option. And keep in mind, though, that at some level, sugar is sugar, whether it's from added sugars, natural sugars, or refined sugars. It all counts towards your sugar or carbohydrate intake. And some recent research even shows that we may be better able to choose our carbohydrates based upon the ratio of carbohydrates to fiber in grams per serving that are listed on the nutrition label. So if the ratio is greater than 10 to 1 for carbohydrates to fiber, the recommendation is to avoid this food. If the ratio is less than 10 to 1, it is likely a good choice. And if the ratio is less than 5 to 1, this is a great choice. For example, if your drink has 25 grams of sugar and only 1 gram of fiber, this is a 25 to 1 ratio and will be classified as a food to avoid by this scale. Now, this is not perfect because it doesn't include the glycemic index, but it may lead you to better carbohydrate choices. Lastly, you should try to identify whole grains or oats as the first ingredient on the list at the bottom of the label for carbohydrate foods. Now, a range of 45 to 65% of carbohydrate intake in your total diet is typically recommended. For body composition purposes, much of the current research is indicating that the lower end of this spectrum is likely a good thing. This means smart carbohydrate choices, as with all nutrients, at each meal. So the next logical question is, what about fats? Well, the first thing is that when you are eating lean meats, and you often have both protein and fat in the food, so sometimes you don't have to actively seek out more fat to eat. But there are definitely times when a good mix of the types of fat need to be considered, or total fat needs to be increased or decreased. The good news is that you can find all of the fat information on the label too. So consuming certain types of good fats can actually help to improve body composition. So how can that be the case? Well, as we've discussed, fats are generally more satiating than either proteins or carbohydrates, meaning that they leave you feeling full longer and stop you from reaching back for a second helping or snack. And fats are absolutely necessary for many body processes and are the main fuel for the body at rest and during low to moderate intensity activity. So, how many calories should come from fat each day? Which fats are better for us and which fats get the bad rap? How can you distinguish this on the food label? Well, there's no gram per day recommendation for fat. Instead, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, or USDA, provides a general range based on the percentage of your total dietary intake, including about 20 to 35% of your total calories coming from fat. But new research shows that many people are successful with more fat than this and still improve body composition and health. So a better way to consider fats is by the types of fats. And choosing a good mix of poly, mono, and saturated fats is a good idea. Also, limiting omega-6 fatty acids from excessive intake of vegetable oils and pre-made dressings, and increasing intake of omega-3 fatty acids from fish, nuts, and seeds is another good idea overall. Also, as of January 2006, trans fats have been required to be on the nutrition facts label. These rarely occur naturally and are considered the really bad guys of nutrition. They are formed when liquid oils are made to be solid, a simple way to increase the shelf life of products. Essentially, they are man-made by hydrogenation, where the hydrogen ions are forced into the fat to change its chemical makeup. The reason they're known as lethal is because not only do they increase bad cholesterol, but they also decrease good cholesterol and are directly related to heart disease risk. In fact, in November 2013, the FDA concluded that partially hydrogenated oils could no longer be considered as GRAS, or generally recognized as safe. After lots of bad publicity, manufacturers have decreased the amount of trans fats found in our foods significantly. But trans fats are still found in many snack-type foods, cookies, crackers, and food fried in partially hydrogenated oils. Refer to the ingredients list to avoid being tricked. Some products will report 0 trans fats on the nutrition label, but hydrogenated oil in the ingredients list. Well, partially hydrogenated oils are the alter ego of trans fats. The two are equivalent. So it's best to try and avoid foods high in trans fats by reading the labels carefully. But give yourself a break because they are hidden in many of your favorites, I bet. And a great place to start your fat intake, one of the high quality kind, is to make it about 20 to 35% of your total calorie intake. Remember that for fat calories, you need to multiply the fat grams by 9, not 4, as you did for both protein and carbohydrates. This means that fat has the highest calorie count per gram of the macronutrients. So if by chance you aim for 60 to 100 grams of fat per day, this equals between 540 and 900 calories from fat alone. And one interesting side note is that alcohol provides about 7 calories per gram, making it more energy dense than either carbohydrates or protein. So besides the big 3, protein, carbohydrates, and fat, also consider the sodium and cholesterol content of foods if you know you have a poor family or personal disease history with these nutrients. Otherwise, new research indicates far less concern than originally thought. Also, look at the amount of micronutrients in your food, including vitamins and minerals. A few will be listed on your food label. It is best to aim for about 100% of the micronutrients in your daily diet from all meals and supplements. So, to summarize, let's re-examine some key points. Your diet quality is the most important aspect to improving body composition because all calories are not created equal. As it is often said, consider eating better rather than just eating less. And know what foods to look for on the nutrition facts label. This can help you to identify better choices. Look for protein in your food choices, see what types of sugars you are consuming, and aim for quality fats. And take your time on your next visit to the